Packers 31, Lions 24. On the Packers side of things here, Chris, Jordan Love just threw the football all over the yard. He activated multiple wide receivers. Christian Watson had a big game. Dontavian Wicks, 7 targets, 6 catches, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. Some awesome grabs from Dontavian Wicks. It even earned him a little kiss from Matt LaFleur. I don't know if you saw this, but I mean, it sure...
Okay.
I mean, dude, I get it, bro. I like Dontavian Wicks a lot. I'm rooting for him, but and I made a meme of that about me and Ham on the holidays. I feel about Ham on the holidays as Matt LaFleur clearly felt about that Dontavian Wicks game. So good sign for Dontavian Wicks with some clutch catches and a little kiss from his head coach here. So what do we think about the Packers in this game? Really impressive performance on Thanksgiving, Chris.
I just don't understand this Packers offense, to be quite honest with you. It's just, why does Jordan Love have to chuck the ball so far down the field every single attempt? I feel like it's the 3 to 5 step drop
Look at
back.
this passing chart.
I know. It's like, why do we have to do this? I get it when it was Tucker Kraft was healthy in the offense, and assuming if Jaden Reed comes back at some point, I get if the entire pass catching personnel was healthy and ready to roll, I could understand this passing chart. But if you're now relying on Christian Watson, who again, he had ACL surgery this calendar year, and you're relying on him in order to create explosives. Romeo Doubs is probably, I'd say, as solid of a perimeter wide receiver as they come, but just not from a week-to-week standpoint is he somebody that you want to continue to rely on. And of course, now Dontavian Wicks popping up. But now outside of that, if you're also looking at Luke Musgrave or Josh Jacobs or whomever else out of the backfield to create, it's just, why does Jordan Love have to be throwing the ball 11, 12 air yards down the field on a week in, week out basis? And also, this was also in a game where the Lions, they were without their top pass catcher throughout most of the contest. They could have continued to just march down the field and probably made it a simpler game than what it turned out to be in the end. So that's the only other thing. It's just, I don't know how he keeps getting away with this each week. I don't understand how this works. But out of all of it, if I'm looking to anybody from a pass catching standpoint for week in and week out production, it is Christian Watson. Now 30% target rate over the past couple of weeks. And if Jordan Love he continues to play this style of game, Christian Watson is the perfect wide receiver for a quarterback like Jordan Love. So it's good to see, but it's just, I'm wondering at some point if the wheels are going to wind up falling off of this type of volatile offense, in my opinion.
Well, you mentioned they keep getting away with it. They don't keep getting away with it. That's the thing. That's why they have these really bad games, because it's so – and I understand, like, this is what they want to be. They want to be a physical ground team, and then they want to take deep shots, off play action, the fadeaways that – it can be frustrating with Jordan Love. Can be sick when he hits them, but can be frustrating when he's missing them. And that just leads to this volatility. But I do kind of think that's just who Jordan Love is, and it's kind of where this personnel group is right now. I think at least it's encouraging to see, and Jaden Reed's impending return, Matthew Golden's impending return maybe shakes this up, but I like it when this room is just, the wide receiver room is it's mostly just 3 guys here. 81% route participation for Doubs and Wicks. Doubs and Watson, and then Wicks is 69%. It's a deep, distant fourth for Malik Heath at 18%. Like that makes a lot more sense, because then you can get these guys in a rhythm into the flow of the game, which we saw for Watson, we saw for Wicks, and Doubs scored a touchdown as well. So I like this version of the Packers offense, but I agree with you. It can be frustrating when it hits so good, and then one of these games is going to just look bad, and it can be super frustrating because of the volatility of all of it. On the Lions side of things here, I mean, this game really changes the complexion of their season, I think. And maybe that's hyperbolic, but now they have a 30% chance to make the playoffs, according to the New York Times playoff predictor. So that is super problematic. They also lose Amon-Ra St. Brown early in this game, left in the first quarter. Next Gen Stats notes that without Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams did step up with a 35% target rate. That's the highest of any game in his career where he ran at least 5 routes. He recorded a career high 87 yards after the catch, plus 54 yak over expected, the most by any Lions wide receiver since at least 2016. He was super productive on in-breaking routes, 4 receptions, 106 yards, along with 50 yards after the catch. So James Williams stepped up, man, which was great to see. As I was telling Ray in the preview show, as soon as you can count him out because he has a 0 game, it's when he's going to come back and get fed. St. Brown leaving obviously helps, but the Lions didn't have it early in this game, and they were able to recover to make it close. But now they're in a pretty tough spot in terms of where they're sitting at 7-5.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And Honestly, the only other surprising note that I had from the passing game standpoint was, where was Jahmyr Gibbs in this one? Not from a rushing standpoint, from the receiving portion, because I think we were talking about him last week about his massive target share in week 12. I would have assumed that, especially with ARSB going down, that it would have been a similar usage for Jahmyr Gibbs, but just 4 targets here. So yeah, it was good to see Jameson Williams and continuing that development and also being used on some of those in-breakers across the middle of the field and essentially tapping into that yak ability that we know that Jameson Williams has. But outside of that, it's like now we're looking at Tom Kennedy, Isaac Tesla. I mean, there's just very few options for this Jared Goff-led offense where, yeah, if they're already kind of stuck in, like, as the graphic shows, in the hunt for a playoff spot, if you're not going to have your top receiver there on the field with you, I don't see too many other guys outside of Williams and Gibbs that could really allow Jared Goff to at least put them back in a position where they're back on this, getting a chance for a playoff spot.
It was at least exciting to see Isaac Tesla score a touchdown, 17 air yards per target. That was at least cool to see on a Thanksgiving.
That is cool.
That was something. But obviously, that's not what the Lions want to see. They want to see Amon-Ra St. Brown out there. So we'll have to monitor his injury. Sounds like it could have been worse, according to Dan Campbell. But again, we'll have to monitor that. But nice performance there from Jameson Williams. That was really cool to see him get back on the map here in a tough matchup. Let's go to the next game here, which was one of the more enjoyable games to watch this week. Cowboys 31, Chiefs 28. We got excellent games from both George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb in this one. I watched this game at my sister and brother-in-law's house. My brother-in-law's a big Cowboys fan, and he has George Pickens on a bunch of fantasy teams because he listens to the show. He has a bunch of George Pickens fantasy teams. I told him, I was like, hey, buddy, just get ready early in this game. I think Brian Schottenheimer's shooting you straight. You're going to get a lot of CeeDee Lamb targets in this game. It is about to happen. That is what happened over and over again early in the game. 9 targets, 7 catches for CeeDee Lamb. Moved around the formation, caught 4 or 5 targets for 44 yards and a touchdown, and drew a bunch of penalties in the coverage of Trent McDuffie. 3 penalties for 50 yards. It was definitely a bad game from McDuffie in terms of allowing plays to CeeDee Lamb particularly, but George Pickens also got off on this game. And again, I feel really happy that I've been talking so much about George Pickens' slant routes because, man, it came to fruition in this game against Kansas City. According to Next Gen, Pickens was targeted 5 times on slant routes in this game, caught 4 for 73, the most by any receiver running slants in a game this season. So shout out to Tom Brady and shout out to Reception Perception for George Pickens' slant route knowledge.
Yeah, George Michael Thomas Pickens showing up with all the slant routes that he's getting hit on at this point. But no, I would say, we were talking earlier about the idealized offense for the Panthers. I would say that this is probably like the ideal version for the Cowboys, where you're seeing Dak really hone in on his top 2 pass catchers in CeeDee and George Pickens. I mean, we now have 6 games since Lamb has returned from injury, and Pickens is averaging 9 targets per game over that same stretch. And honestly, outside of, I would say, a couple of drops for CeeDee in week 12, now we're starting to see both of them hit, where it's Pickens being able to use on some of these slant routes, CeeDee on some of these crossers, and while we're also seeing him move around the formation, this is really how you can start to harness the power of a good cerebral pre-snap processor like Dak Prescott, and having these 2 wide receivers that can essentially beat you on almost any route concept really start to come to fruition. So I'm excited to see this version of Pickens and CeeDee Lamb on the field, and they've got some. I mean, they're not the worst matchups, but I mean, Detroit next week, Minnesota, Chargers, and then Washington over the fantasy playoffs. I mean, there should be some pretty decent shootouts moving forward. And if this is the way that we can see these 2 continue to operate on the field together, if you have Lamb or if you have Pickens, I mean, they should be locked into your starting roster for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I feel like this is probably a hot takey, but I think they're even more dangerous together than Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. No offense to your Bengals there, just because I think George Pickens brings you more interchangeability with CeeDee Lamb than Higgins does with Chase, because Higgins is a great player, but he's kind of in that X receiver only bucket where he's a downfield ball winner. Whereas Pickens has shown this year, and as we've been talking about kind of ad nauseum on this show, this has been building since the beginning of last year. There was the ability to run those quick hitting slant routes, what he's doing on the deeper digs and crossers. There's just ways you can weaponize those guys together in terms of, all right, on this read, George Pickens is the low man, CeeDee's the high man, and then you flip that around when you're trying to weaponize one or the other. It's a real impossible like kind of choice for a defense as to who are we allocating resources towards. It's easier to allocate resources towards George Pickens because he's the outside X receiver and that's the easier guy to shade coverage towards. But because he's running these slants over and over again, and you also need to be, as we saw in this game, concerned with CeeDee Lamb ripping it over the intermediate area. Again, I don't know what you do as an opposing defense right now with CeeDee healthy and playing at his best, and also this version of George Pickens. Chris, it's a pretty rough combination for opposing defensive coordinators. And the Cowboys, again, now they have a chance to really, I don't know if they're going to push towards the postseason. 22% chance to make the playoffs according to New York Times. It's a long shot, but they at least have a chance to play spoiler down the stretch for some teams here.
Yeah, and kind of to your point, I think that there is that level of route diversity across both of them that they can both eat. I mean, obviously they did in this game against the Chiefs, whereas with the Bengals, I'm trying to remember a game where it was both Jamar and T hitting at the same time. Typically when one is hit, the other one had I would say a pedestrian type of day. If it's T Higgins having multiple touchdowns, you'll see Jamar Chase with say a 6 for 80 and no touchdown type of a stat line. Whereas it's here, I mean, even with the targets concentrated on both of them, you can see how both of them really do kind of vault into that top 12 discussion just because of, if it's not George Pickens on the slants, it's CeeDee on some of those intermediate crossers. So there's an easy way for both of them to kind of still remain as wide receiver ones, that 1A, 1B type situation that from a fantasy standpoint, you got to love to see.
One of those teams that they played spoiler to was the Kansas City Chiefs, who they beat in this game. The Kansas City Chiefs, I mean, they now have a 40% chance to make the postseason. It's getting late here for Kansas City, and this was not a game they could afford to lose. And despite the fact they lost this game, I mean, it kind of played out exactly the way we expected from a preview standpoint here. Rashee Rice went crazy, 8 catches, 92 yards, 2 touchdowns. 84 of his 92 yards came against zone coverage, along with one of the touchdowns. And Patrick Mahomes threw all over this zone-heavy defense, and yet they made just enough plays up front to kind of settle things down. They did not allow a big rushing performance here. 15 touches for Kareem Hunt, just 5 for Pacheco in his return. So I don't know, Chris, like, this is the 2025 Chiefs. They're not as good of a team, I think, as people keep wanting to try to make them.
And it's still kind of frustrating to see here, even in week 13, they're still trying to figure out how to get focus on Rashee Rice. I understand that portion of it, but still, how do they involve Xavier Worthy and keep him being productive with Rice on the field? I mean, 6 targets for Worthy. Okay, fine, we'll take that. Half of them were screen passes, so I get the idea of trying to get the ball into his hands, have him work after the catch, use some of that speed. But still, there's just not enough there, because we were just talking about the Cowboys and how they can get these variety of route concepts for both CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. It doesn't seem like that same level of, I don't know, mesh is there for Worthy and Rice yet. And right now, I mean, 3 months into the season, they're staring down the barrel of potentially missing the playoffs. It just seems like this is something that we'd hope they would have planned a bit better for, but we're just not seeing it there for just having all of their guys healthy on the field together. It just seems like it's Rice, maybe a bit of Kelsey, and then Worthy is just this distant option. The same thing. He almost falls in the same bucket as Juju Smith-Schuster, Hollywood Brown. They're just ancillary options, but we would expect there to be more for a guy like Worthy, as we've seen those big games from him in the past. It's just not happening though with Rice back on the field.